In the grand pantheon of galactic species, humans held a special place. Not at the top, mind you, far from it. Humans were widely regarded as the nice pets of the Galactic Council. You know, baseball. The kind of species you pat on the head when they come up with a novel solution to interplanetary waste management, or when they volunteer to host yet another peace summit between the perpetually warring Cracks and Thunderians. The Galactic Council itself was a marvel of cosmic architecture, a massive rotating ring station positioned at the exact gravitational center of the most influential systems. The main chamber featured seating for over 200 species, arranged in tiers that roughly corresponded with each civilization's technological advancement and political clout. Humans, naturally, were seated in the section mockingly referred to as the kiddie table, alongside the methane-breathing glorabacks and the gelatinous oozlings. For 73 Earth years, humanity had been part of this interstellar community, and for 73 years, they'd been everyone's favorite doormat. Need someone to clean up a toxic waste spill on a moon nobody wants. Call the humans. They'll do it with a smile. Need a diplomatic buffer between two species that would literally melt each other on contact. The humans will figure it out. Want someone to blame when the Arcturian trade agreement falls through? Well, those humans really should have known better. Captain Mac Reynolds had witnessed this firsthand for 20 years as Earth's chief representative to the Council. A career diplomat with salt and pepper hair, perpetually tired eyes, and an ulcer named Gerald. He'd had it so long, he felt it deserved a name. Reynolds had mastered the art of the diplomatic smile. It was the kind of smile that said, "Yes, I understand your species has accidentally strip-mined one of our colonies, but I'm sure we can work something out." Today, as Reynolds straightened his immaculately pressed blue uniform and prepared for another council session, he caught his reflection in the polished surface of his quarters. That diplomatic smile looked a bit more strained than usual. There were new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when Earth first joined the Council. In the beginning, he had genuinely believed in humanity's role as peacekeepers and problem solvers. Now he was beginning to wonder if the rest of the galaxy had mistaken kindness for weakness. He sighed, adjusting his collar one last time. Just another day of being everybody's favorite pushover, he muttered to himself, not knowing that today, of all days, was about to change everything. The Viridian delegation had a problem with spatial awareness, or at least that's what they claimed when their newest diplomatic vessel, which, strangely enough, was armed with what appeared to be planet-cracking weaponry, performed what they called a standard docking maneuver at Europa Station. Europa Station, humanity's pride and joy, the first major human construction project in space that had been completed without alien supervision, was now scattered across Jupiter's orbit in chunks no bigger than a standard escape pod. A most unfortunate navigational error, Ambassador Zeal of Viridia announced to the Council, his forearms spread wide in a gesture that might have conveyed remorse if his species wasn't physiologically incapable of the emotion. Our pilot confused your outdated station for a similar-looking garbage disposal unit. An understandable mistake, given the, shall we say, primitive aesthetic. Reynolds sat rigidly in his chair, the diplomatic smile frozen on his face as Zeal continued. The Viridian hegemony is, of course, prepared to offer compensation. Zeal's voice dripped with magnanimity. We propose 3 crates of our lower-grade ceremonial spices, and perhaps a small technical consultant team to help the humans design a more distinguishable station next time. One that doesn't look quite so much like trash. Several council members tittered, the sound of various alien forms of laughter filling the chamber. The Praxian representative, a being composed primarily of crystalline structures, actually shattered a smaller appendage from laughing too hard, only to regrow it moments later. The council chair, Grand Arbiter Sorlak of the Dreth Imperium, silenced the chamber with a thunderous tap of his ceremonial staff. Zorlak resembled nothing so much as a 9-foot-tall praying mantis wearing what humans would call a very fancy hat. The council recognizes the delegate from Earth. Sorlak's mandibles clicked as he spoke. Captain Reynolds, I assume you wish to respond to the Viridian offer of compensation? Reynolds stood slowly, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their trembling not from fear, but from the superhuman effort it took not to launch himself across the chamber and strangle Ambassador Zeal with his own decorative neck tendrils. Grand Arbiter, distinguished delegates, Reynolds began, his voice steadied despite the storm brewing inside him. Europa Station was home to 17,000 people. It contained irreplaceable scientific research, cultural artifacts, and served as the primary waypoint for human vessels throughout the solar system. Yes, interrupted Delegate Plex of the Moraxian Collective, a being who resembled a sentient pile of cables wearing expensive robes. But no one important was killed, correct? Just humans. The diplomatic smile on Reynolds' face cracked ever so slightly. I would remind the distinguished delegate from Moraxia that humans are, in fact, recognized as sentient beings under Galactic Charter Section 47B, Reynolds said, his knuckles white behind his back. Technically sentient, corrected Ambassador Tuluk of the Granthi Federation, his blue skin rippling with what passed for amusement among his kind. You achieved the minimum score on the sentience assessment. By 1 point, if memory serves. And added Ambassador Zeal. Let's not forget that the station was in a restricted zone according to the Treaty of Ganymede. A treaty that was amended 3 decades ago, Reynolds countered, feeling Gerald the ulcer doing backflips in his stomach. With the full approval of this council. Grand Arbiter Sorlak waved a spindly limb dismissively. Historical details are irrelevant, Captain Reynolds. The matter at hand is the Viridian offer of compensation, which seems more than generous given the circumstances. In Reynolds' mind, a small door that had been labeled patience for 73 years, a door behind which humanity had stored every slight, every dismissal, every accidental incursion into their territory, every patronizing pat on the head, that door was beginning to buckle. 3 crates of spices, Reynolds repeated slowly, for 17,000 lives. Very high-quality spices, Ambassador Zeal added helpfully. Almost good enough for Viridian consumption. And just like that, the door in Reynolds' mind blew off its hinges. His diplomatic smile didn't just slip, it evaporated. His eyes, normally careful to project polite interest, now burned with something the council had never seen from a human representative before. I believe Reynolds said, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave, that humanity will need to consider this offer carefully. If you'll excuse me, I must consult with my government. Without waiting for dismissal, Captain Mac Reynolds turned on his heel and left the council chamber, leaving behind a wake of confused aliens who had never seen a human do anything but acquiesce. As the doors of the chamber closed behind him, Reynolds pulled out his communicator and pressed a single button, one that had been installed 73 years ago but had never once been activated. "This is Captain Reynolds," he said into the device. "Authorization code. Enough is enough. I repeat, enough is enough." The emergency session of the United Earth Government convened within hours of Reynolds' transmission. Unlike the ornate theatrics of the Galactic Council chambers, the UAG met in a simple, circular room beneath the ruins of old Geneva. No frills, no fancy chairs differentiated by species status, just a plain table where decisions affecting humanity's future were made. Reynolds stood at the center, his diplomatic uniform now exchanged for the more comfortable standard UAG black jumpsuit. On a massive screen behind him played looping footage of Europa Station's destruction. "So they offered us spices," said President Eleanor Frost, a woman whose silver hair and stern expression had earned her the nickname the Glacier among Earth's political circles. "Yes, Madam President. 3 crates of their lower-grade ceremonial spices, to be precise." Reynolds couldn't keep the edge from his voice. and technical consultants to help us build a station that doesn't resemble trash quite so much. A murmur of anger rippled through the assembled leaders. "In the Council's position?" asked Admiral Zhang, the head of Earth's officially recognized defense forces. "The Council considers the offer generous," Reynolds replied. "Ambassador Tuluk actually suggested we should be grateful for the learning opportunity." President Frost's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "I see," she said quietly. "And your recommendation, Captain?" Reynolds took a deep breath. For 20 years, he had advocated patience, diplomacy, and understanding. For 20 years, he had argued that humanity's position would improve with time, that respect would be earned through consistent demonstration of Earth's commitment to peace. "Madam President, distinguished leaders of humanity," he began, his voice steady now, "I recommend we activate Protocol Omega." The room fell silent. Protocol Omega, officially titled Operation That's Enough of That, Thank You, had been developed in the first year of human contact with the galactic community. It had been updated regularly but never implemented, always deemed too risky, too confrontational. "Are you certain, Captain?" President Frost asked, though her tone suggested she already knew his answer. 17,000 people, Madam President. Dismissed as an inconvenience. Reynolds' voice finally cracked. They laughed. President Frost nodded once, then pressed a button on the table before her. "This is President Eleanor Frost of the United Earth Government. By unanimous pre-authorization of the Security Council, I am hereby activating Protocol Omega, effective immediately. Authorization code, it's about damn time." The screen behind Reynolds changed, displaying a countdown clock. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Admiral Zhang, standing now, "it will take approximately 48 hours to bring all systems online. I suggest you prepare your respective departments." As the room emptied, Reynolds found himself alone with President Frost. "Do you think they'll ever understand why we waited so long?" he asked her. Frost's stern expression softened slightly. "Humans have always valued peace, Captain. We tried their way. We played by their rules. We smiled and nodded and helped and sacrificed. But there comes a point when being nice becomes being a victim." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "History will remember that we tried diplomacy first. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, classified facilities began powering up systems that had been quietly built and maintained for decades. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt disengaged their cloaking fields. Research stations on the dark side of Pluto transmitted activation codes to satellites that had been dismissed by alien observers as primitive communication relays. In his private quarters, Reynolds watched a live feed from Mars, where an entire underground city, supposedly a terraforming research facility, was transforming into what it had always truly been, the command center for humanity's hidden fleet. "Computer," Reynolds said to the empty room, "play the Imperial March." As the dramatic music filled his quarters, Reynolds allowed himself a very different kind of smile, one that would have made any alien in the Galactic Council very, very nervous. The Galactic Council was in the middle of a heated debate about fishing rights in the Andromedan Stream when Captain Reynolds returned 3 days after his abrupt departure. The chamber fell silent as he entered, not because of any particular respect for the human, but because of what followed him. 6 figures in sleek black armor that no alien in the room recognized. Their helmets revealed no faces, only reflective surfaces that showed the observers their own startled expressions. They moved with fluid precision, taking positions around the human delegation's modest seating area. Captain Reynolds, Grand Arbiter Sorlak began, confusion evident in the rapid clicking of his mandibles. "The Council did not expect your return so soon, and you appear to have brought unauthorized security personnel." Reynolds approached the speaking platform with unhurried steps. Gone was the diplomatic uniform, replaced by a simple black outfit with no insignia or rank markers. Gone was the perpetual diplomatic smile, replaced by an expression of calm neutrality. Grand Arbiter, distinguished delegates, Reynolds began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber despite its softness. I return with humanity's response to the Viridian offer of compensation. Ambassador Zeal leaned forward, his forearms moving in what humans had learned was a gesture of smug satisfaction. We assumed you would accept our generosity. The spices can be delivered within. We decline, Reynolds interrupted, something no human had ever done in the council chamber. A shocked murmur ran through the assembly. You decline? Grand Arbiter Sorlach repeated, as if the concept was difficult to process. Perhaps there is a translation error. To decline would suggest that humans have an alternative proposal. We do, Reynolds said. He raised a small device and pressed a button. The grand display screens that encircled the council chamber, typically showing statistical data or the occasional educational program about the superiority of elder species, suddenly changed. They now showed images from space, hundreds of them, cycling through different sectors of the galaxy. Sectors where massive ships were decloaking, hundreds of them, thousands. What is this? Demanded Ambassador Tuluk of the Granthi Federation. Some primitive attempt at visual deception? Reynolds smiled, not the diplomatic smile of old, but something altogether different. At this moment, humanity is revealing approximately 12% of our total military capacity. Ships that have been in position for decades, observing, waiting. We call it the Silent Fleet. The council erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other, some demanding explanations, others calling for security. Grand Arbiter Sorlach slammed his staff repeatedly. Order. I will have order. When the chamber finally quieted, Reynolds continued as if there had been no interruption. The Viridian vessel that destroyed Europa Station is currently surrounded by 27 human warships. They are, at this moment, being escorted back to Viridian space. They will not be harmed this time. Ambassador Zeal's skin had turned a sickly yellow, his species equivalent of going pale. This is outrageous. The Treaty of Galactic Inclusion specifically prohibits non-founding species from maintaining military forces beyond their solar system. Ah yes, Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. The same treaty that relegated Earth to probationary status for 73 years. The treaty that allowed Viridian mining operations in the Kuiper Belt, despite our objections. The treaty that, how did Ambassador Tuluk put it 5 years ago, keeps the children at the kiddie table where they belong. On the screens, more ships were decloaking, these closer to major trade routes and, notably, near the homeworlds of several council members. What you are seeing, Reynolds continued, is project we've actually been paying attention. While we smiled and nodded at your guidance, humanity was studying, learning, and building. Those technical advisors you sent to help us? They talked a lot, often about things they shouldn't have. Admiral Zhang's voice came through the chamber's communication system. Captain Reynolds, Phase 2 is complete. All systems report ready status. Reynolds nodded. Thank you, Admiral. He turned back to the stunned council. Now, about our counter-proposal regarding compensation for Europa Station. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was convened in record time, approximately 17 minutes after Reynolds' demonstration began. What had been scheduled as a routine meeting about fishing rights had transformed into the most significant crisis in Council history. Grand Arbiter Sorlach, whose species was normally known for its unflappable composure, was visibly agitated, his antennae twitching erratically as Reynolds took the central position on the speaking platform. Captain Reynolds, Sorlach began, his voice strained with forced diplomacy. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The Council has always valued Earth's contributions. Has it? Reynolds asked mildly. He pressed another button on his device. The chamber's audio system began playing recordings, thousands of them, snippets from private conversations between council members over decades. Just humor the humans until they're useful. Remarkable how they haven't realized we've been harvesting their lunar materials. Their diplomats are adorably naive. Keep them distracted with meaningless committee assignments. With each new voice, the color drained further from the faces, scales, and exoskeletons of the council members. For 73 years, Reynolds said quietly as the playback ended, humanity has been recording everything. Every broken promise, every secret meeting, every backhanded compliment and outright insult. We call it Operation. Actually, we were listening the whole time. Ambassador Zeal, whose usual confident demeanor had collapsed entirely, raised a trembling limb. This is a violation of privacy and diplomatic protocol. Is it? Reynolds tilted his head. The same way the Viridian spy network in our Martian colonies was a cultural observation mission? Or perhaps the way the Granthi intelligence operatives posing as exchange students have been stealing our scientific research for decades. Ambassador Tuluk's skin rippled in the pattern that indicated extreme distress among his species. What do you want, human? Reynolds smiled. Finally, a productive question. He stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. Humanity wants the following: full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges thereof. Immediate reparations for Europa Station, not in spices, but in technology transfers specifically relating to medical advancements in sustainable energy. A formal apology from the Viridian hegemony, and the immediate cessation of all unauthorized activities in Earth's solar system. Grand Arbiter Sorlak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense calculation. These demands are unprecedented. So is our patience, Reynolds countered. 73 years of it. And if we refuse, asked the representative from the Kortoth Dominion, a species known for their tactical brilliance. Reynolds sighed, as if disappointed by the question. We've analyzed every major species' military capabilities, supply chains, and strategic vulnerabilities. For instance, he nodded toward the Kortoth representative. Your empire's entire communication network relies on quantum relays positioned in the Horsehead Nebula. 7 minutes ago, human ships established a presence there. Not a threat, just a presence. He looked around the chamber. The Dreth Imperium's primary food source requires specific bacteria from the moons of Talax V. The Viridian power grid depends on rare elements from their mining operations in the Oort Cloud. The Granthi Federation's leadership compound on their homeworld is currently under observation by 32 human satellites that your superior detection systems haven't noticed. The chamber was deathly silent now. But Reynolds continued, his voice softening, humanity doesn't want war. We never have. All we want is respect and fair treatment. Is that really so much to ask? After a moment of stunned silence, Grand Arbiter Zorlak cleared his throat. The council will recess for 1 hour to consider Earth's proposals. As the delegates fled the chamber, Reynolds sat calmly in the human section, finally comfortable in the knowledge that no one would be calling it the kiddie table anymore. 6 months after what galactic historians would come to call the Patience Incident, Captain Mac Reynolds sat in his new office in the eastern spire of the Galactic Council Station. The office previously reserved for senior diplomatic attaches of founding species offered a spectacular view of the rebuilt Europa Station, now serving as the headquarters for the newly established Human Diplomatic Corps. A chime announced a visitor. Enter, Reynolds called. Ambassador Zeal of the Viridian hegemony stepped cautiously into the room, all four of his arms clutching various gift boxes and data tablets. "Captain Reynolds," Zeal began, his voice pitched higher than usual, "I bring the quarterly progress report on the reparation projects, along with some small tokens of Viridian esteem." Reynolds gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please sit, and you can leave the gifts with my assistant. The reparations schedule is sufficient." Zeal carefully placed the gifts on a side table and sat nervously, his eyes darting around as if expecting hidden weapons to emerge from the walls. "The medical technology transfer is ahead of schedule," he reported anxiously. "And our scientists have prepared additional research that wasn't part of the original agreement. A gesture of goodwill." "That's very thoughtful," Reynolds replied evenly. "Please convey my appreciation to your government." After reviewing the reports and exchanging pleasantries that were painfully formal on Zeal's part, the ambassador practically fled the office, nearly colliding with Grand Arbiter Sorlac in the doorway. "Ambassador Zeal seems eager to please these days," Sorlac observed as he entered, his once imposing frame somehow diminished by recent events. Reynolds shrugged. "Amazing what a little honesty can accomplish." Sorlac settled his angular form into the visitor's chair. "The council session tomorrow will ratify Earth's proposal for the Galactic Education Initiative. No opposition is expected. And the military cooperation treaty?" "Proceeding smoothly," Sorlac confirmed. "Though I must admit, many species are still adjusting to the revelation of human capabilities." Reynolds allowed himself a small smile. "They shouldn't be surprised. We told everyone from the beginning that Earth's primary exports were culture, diplomacy, and adaptability. You neglected to mention strategic patience and hidden warships," Sorlac noted dryly. "An oversight," Reynolds replied with a straight face. As Sorlac departed, Reynolds turned to gaze out at the stars. His communicator beeped with a message from President Frost. "Phase 4 preparations complete. Proceed." Reynolds thought about it for a moment. The galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality, a reality where humans weren't just the nice, helpful species that would clean up everyone else's messes. Perhaps it was time to ease up on the revelations. "Delay Phase 4, he typed back. "Let's give them time to get used to Phases 1 to 3 first." After all, humanity had always valued peace. They had always preferred cooperation over conflict. The difference now was that the rest of the galaxy understood an essential truth about humans. Being nice was a choice, not a weakness. As if to emphasize this point, Reynolds watched as a diplomatic shuttle from the Praxian Collective approached the council station with almost comical caution, keeping well within the designated flight path, something they had never bothered with before. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as species that had once dismissed humans as cosmic pushovers now found themselves nervously reading and rereading human cultural guides to avoid giving offense. Reynolds chuckled to himself, remembering an old Earth saying his grandmother had been fond of, "Be nice until it's time to not be nice." The galaxy had finally learned when that time was for humanity, and no species would ever forget it. As for Captain Mac Reynolds, he finally scheduled that stomach surgery he'd been putting off. Gerald, the ulcer had served his purpose, but some things, unlike humanity's patience, didn't need to last forever.